My earliest memories of Zion was, I don't know if I should tell this story about Christmas Day when I was 3 years old. It was my first Christmas program, and we sang Away in a Manger, and my mom had made me a dress with snaps all the way down. And as we were through, I said, "And Jesus loves us," or something. And I pulled on my dress and it unsnapped, and there I was like this. And my mom had to run up and snap my dress back again. And people remembered that with me for so many years, teasing me about it, because I was only 3. But that was kind of my beginning, I guess. I was baptized here.
Well, when we were young and we had Bible school, we would have a lot of children that came, maybe 50. And we would meet here, and this used to be stairs, and we would go up singing Onward Christian Soldier into the church. And that
would go outside and march up into the church.
And that would be a lot of kids in line singing Onward Christian Soldier.
So it sounds like that was quite a service to the neighborhood.
Yes.
Yes, because they would go around and ask if they had signs up, they would tell people. And then after they got used to the time, they would come every year.
Yeah.
Because then they knew. And that was a break for the parents too, but it also helped those children learn about Jesus.
And then of course when I got into high school and Mrs. Weber we didn't have a lot of youth in Walther Lake. There was like 4 of us at the meetings all the time. But what I realized is even with the small group, this church put a lot of effort into the 4 of us. It was Joylyn Jones and James and Karen Shoddy and I most of the time. But even with that, they still had youth counselors.
You've mentioned Renata Weber twice, and a lot of people in Walther League have done so. Any more you'd like to share about her?
She is the one she kind of made me feel guilty as a kid. If I missed church, I was afraid that what am I going to tell Mrs. Weber why I wasn't at church? I mean, even when I was legitimately sick. So that was it was good though, because it made me realize how important somebody thought it was that I was here. And it turned out to be very important, because without this church, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be at all. So that's the importance of Renata Weber.
She was the youth counselor for the Walther League for as long as I can remember, the entire time I was a member of the Walther League. She put up with a lot of shenanigans from us, but she was steady, she was a rock, and she viewed her job as essentially teaching us life skills that would get us further along in our life and hopefully to become leaders of the church.
Renata Weber and Neil Keith were counselors at that time, and oh my gosh, they gave so much of their time to us. Not only did they see that we were well cared for, but they structured activities so that we were given tasks and goals that gave us responsibility and taught us how to be good leaders. And so as we didn't think of it at the time, but as I look back on that, they were preparing us to be good church leaders. In Walther League, we made lifelong friendships, friends that we have to this day.
I just remember that we had a very good group of people. The one boy I remember is Roger Peters. And I was trying to think of some others, but he and I were very close friends, and my mom and dad were close to Lucille and Vern Peters too, and so. But we did, we'd always go up to Ruidoso and thoroughly enjoyed that. Went to several Walther League conventions during my high school years. The big conventions, and in college I served as counselor at summer camps, so I was still doing that.
Then I was involved with Walther League, And the leaders of Walther League was Ann Louise and Marilyn.
Ann Louise Duff,
Ann Louise Duff, but at that time it was Pofall.
Ann Louise Pofall, and Marilyn Geyer.
Right.
And they were our youth leaders, and I really enjoyed that. We came on a Sunday. I was actually the phone person to call everybody to remind them of the service because I'm quite a talker.
Walther League was a huge part of my teenage years. We did a lot of stuff. We worked with all of the Lutheran churches in El Paso, got together, had city council, planned city events between all the Lutheran churches. We would go to rallies in different places in the district, Albuquerque, Silver City, Carlsbad. We just did a lot. And of course, we got in our share of trouble. We went to summer camps. And one quick little story that I'll share is there was a member here, her name was Jane Schumacher. One Sunday we were at a nursing home and one of the members, Bob Keith, encouraged us to go out into the parking lot. Jane was driving the VW Bug that she had inherited from her sister, and we picked up the VW Bug and pulled it over the curb stop, the parking lot curb stop.
You know, when we had summer camp, they had this bell up there at the camp that we would rent, and they would ring that thing at 6:37 in the morning for us to get up for morning devotion. And it was, you know, us guys typically had been up already all night doing pranks. But I remember one night we got my socks and we went and climbed up the pole of that bell and put socks on the clanger.
When we got married, there were no babies in the church. Our children grew up with the Geyer kids and Saugans and the Servers and the Hueys, and all of a sudden, you know, there was a new, fresh community, young community in the church, and it was really neat. We as mothers, you know, and fathers were all involved, just like the generation before us. And I can remember the great programs that we had. You know, the Christmas program was always a big thing, the Easter breakfast. And then also a big highlight was Vacation Bible School. And that was, our kids just grew to have really deep friendships with one another. And that was really special. I didn't have that growing up because I grew up overseas. And I was so glad that Zion was there for my kids. And my kids now, my adult children now, will always say how important growing up in Zion was for them. Sorry.
It was a new generation in the church. But we got together. We would go to different people's houses. We'd go to Juarez for dinner. 4th of July picnics, Memorial Day picnics, Sunday school picnics. All of the kids were there. And it brought us as moms and dads together to work out parenting issues, but it also brought all the kids together to form a lot of lifelong friendships that are still going strong today.
We were all looking for the way to bring up our children in loving, healthy Christian families. We really leaned on and supported one another. You know, Molly Geyer and I were pregnant with our girls at the same time. And now those girls are together in heaven.
I definitely remember that there was such an agreement between parents, whether it was, the Saugans or the Dodges or the Williamsons or the Geyers or whatever. So much agreement about how we raise children and kind of what the boundaries were for kids, that we didn't have to have a lot of tough conversations at home.
Then, of course, we had people like Bill Geyer, who especially was quite a jokester, and he just had a way of engaging with the young people, like my son David and yourself and other young people, and making going to church a kind of fun experience. Helping kids see that, when you grow up, you don't have to be overly serious. You can still have fun and enjoy life, things like that.
I think the thing that seems to now, looking back, really that really mattered was that we had a lot of adults invested in us as kids. So, and it wasn't just adults who had children that they were supporting. There were a lot of adult members of this church who were invested in me and my friends here. And I was treated by a lot of these adults as almost like a peer. I wasn't dismissed as a child or whatever that means. But I was, I believe that the adults here were authentic with me. We were kind of vulnerable with each other, and it was like a peer group. And I can't even imagine what kind of support and confidence that probably gave me. Hard to measure that kind of thing, but I think that's a big foundation in my formation as a person, is that I was valued by adults.
I am so fortunate that my children get to be raised in this church, to see that old people are kind and generous, and how much of a family and supportive they are as a church.